Right, we're at the full. Right, come over here, come over here. Take your hard hats off. I'm an asshole. This isn't an expansive station, okay? Right, the challenge. Ryan, read out the challenge.
Persuade the key decision maker at the client to move an attribution model that captures the full value of mobile and to adjust it using enhanced campaigns.
Read out louder.
Persuade the key decision maker at the client to move to an attribution model that captures the full value of mobile and to adjust bids using enhanced campaigns.
Right, good. That's the challenge. It's a big, big challenge. This is about helping clients to realise the full value of mobile. It's about understanding what untracked conversions means to their business. This is difficult stuff. We've got to connect with new decision makers that we've never met before, to think about the way they've always done business in a different way in order to capture what their customers are doing. That's not an easy thing. Are you up for that challenge? This is the bleeding edge of mobile sales.
Yeah.
Good, okay, that's a challenge. So, difficult. Right, what actually do we have at our disposal to answer this challenge? Who's waiting for the cross-device product stuff to come out?
Hell no!
Nobody.
Assume it's not coming out. What you've got to do is actually use other tools at your disposal. What do we actually have? Hopefully, we have belief. Belief is a key thing here. Let me tell you about a meeting that Simon Morgan had. We worked with BT for a good couple of years, and actually they were saying to us that mobile doesn't convert as well as desktop. They'd built the mobile site, they saw an uplift in conversions, but it was still only about 40% of desktop. And the thing that changed the game was when he got a meeting in with the CEO, and he actually videotaped his journey into work, showing other people actually using devices in a cross-device manner. Someone on the phone, whilst on the tablet. That was the thing that changed the CEO's belief. That was the thing that made him realise my wife does that, my kid does that. And it was that made him then tell the person who ran the e-commerce team to stop talking and to actually realise there was a bigger problem here that they needed to solve. This was about customer service. This was about the way they set up their overall dialogue with consumers, which was bigger than the problem of e-commerce. We've also got, hopefully, some client data. Clients don't always share this with us, but a lot of the time, if you can get sales data, you can correlate what we're seeing with clients' data, which helps to stimulate belief. When clients are running TV advertising, quite often they're using their sales data in an econometric model with industry data. So the importance there is to get this stuff in. Clients are used to using data to correlate and use regression analysis. It's just that we've never operated in that way with search before, and we need to move to that way. Hopefully, we've got good sales techniques. I'm all hoping that's the case. We've got some great research from Google. Sometimes those are industry specific. So we've got a great piece around the travel and mobile consumer that just came out a month ago. And we've also got great third-party research as well that can hopefully help us to build a picture. So these are the tools at your disposal. But the most important one, I would argue, of all of this is belief. You've got to instill the belief before you even have the right brain conversation about the data. So let's move on here to the next section. Now, so actually, before I do that, I had previously a different sheet that showed different types of people and different types of stakeholders. So what we did was we said, okay, aside from just the head of e-commerce, who else is it that we need to speak to? Who else do we need to speak to, Ryan, apart from the head of e-commerce?
We need to speak to the retail guys.
The retail guys. Who else, Neil?
We need to speak to the marketing guys.
The marketing director. Who else, Steph?
The service team.
The service team. Who else, Anise?
Strategy director.
A strategy director. Maybe someone in a call centre. Maybe an econometrics third party. All of these people are people we wouldn't have had a conversation about mobile with previously, but we need to have that now in order to properly get the picture and go up to the right decision maker or across to a stakeholder that could either be an enabler or a blocker. So, we also need to actually ask some pretty shit hot questions, and in the toolkit what you'll actually see is that we've arranged a whole set of stuff for you to properly prepare. So we've got a whole ton of insights, we've got a full value of mobile calculator, we've got a nice piece here that shows you the equation, we've got some best practices on how you layer that in, some advice on how you set up an attribution test, and we've got a bid calculator as well. But I'm focusing more around this piece here. I just wanted you to get a sense of what else is in there. So, if we look at prep questions, Different things to ask. Who's the decision maker? What's their current attribution model? What system do they use? Great example is that Dell, we spent ages talking to them about mobile. They could see that they were getting mobile sales through their Omniture analytics, but their version of GRM did not account for mobile. That was their key problem. So they kept saying mobile's not converting. We eventually found out that that was the main blocker. That is a different conversation to have than mobile's ineffective. That's about how are you changing your version of GRM to account for that so your teams can get paid out on that. And that was the thing that helped us to move it along. Is that system compatible with the full value of mobile? And what's the original data sources that they use? Different questions that the sales teams would normally ask, and our Lovely Solutions sales team will be challenging you now every time you bring them in to have a prep meeting. They'll be asking you whether you really understand these things. So, this was the piece I told you guys about. I did have it on there, where I went through and says who's who, what's what. Happy days. So, let's get to the crux of it. The first thing we need to do is ensure that people have belief. These are the different ways to do that. One way is that you can show them pictures and videos of various things happening, and that helps to instill the belief. I'll give you an example. Something that me and Eric did 2 days ago with Cara Manchester was we actually got everyone on a post-it note to write down what it was, what percentage of their shopping journeys started from a mobile search. Right, so how many of you actually go in store, have started on a mobile? And everyone had a different answer. 15 people, a couple of people said 0. But you know what? Everyone else had 20%, 10%, 40%, 50%. The fact that they all showed it to each other meant that those two people in the room, who probably previously would have been the biggest, loudest cynics, then realised that this was behaviour that was happening across everyone. It also meant that we had a productive discussion and people could understand the insight behind it. We then asked a second question. We asked people on a post-it note to write down what percentage of your online purchases started from a mobile search. And again, we had varying different results. 3 of the 15 said 0%. 6 of the 15 were between 10 and 20. And the rest were actually over 40 to 50%. And we found the insight was that people, when they commute into Manchester, it's a long bus ride, and they tend to do all of that on the bus. So that was really helpful. That actually changed, that set up the discussion with a bunch of very heavy data-focused people to have belief before we even got into the data. So what it meant was that everyone was on the same page, that this is something they need to care about. And we then framed it that it was all about realising the value from untracked conversions. Because full value of mobile can be quite a nebulous term. It doesn't mean anything to everyone. But if you say to someone untracked conversion, whether you're the most savvy search team manager or whether you're a CMO without much knowledge of digital, you understand what that means. That's the classic David Ogilvy problem of 50% of my advertising doesn't work and I don't know which one it is. So, moving on, we now need to think about, once we then get from belief, we need to start working out the equation around how we actually measure the full value of mobile. So in the actual session that I ran, what I did is that I printed out these sheets and gave loads of live examples of this in action. So I literally went through for 2 minutes, sheet by sheet. I'm not going to do it now, to show the teams exactly how they needed to think about this, and then examples of how it was fill in. So if you zoom in on this, there's always a missing part of the equation with which we either need to provide a credible estimate, a piece of third-party research, or some client data. But that is not going to be measured through AdWords, the 20% of users who go in store. In this case, I believe it's, who's this, JD? Their approach was to use some third-party research, and they thought it was credible enough. 20% of users who started with a search went into a store, and that's what helped them to fill up the rest of the equation. They knew from their internal data, 20% of people who go in store make a purchase. They knew the average order value was £80, and suddenly they can fill in the equation and put a value on what that purchase was and what that click on a mobile phone from a mobile search was. So what you need to bear in mind as salespeople is that with the full value of mobile, there's always going to be 1 or 2 bits of data that are missing, and you need to find the most credible estimate and not be afraid to bring that up. Even if actually that's a conservative estimate and it's undervaluing what you believe, if you can get the client to start from that point, then you've got a win there. So, I'd like you then to think about what that means for the way that people bid on mobile with our new flexible and effective enhanced campaign tools. Let's take a thought example. So, Ryan, could you read out this top bit in a loud, proud voice?
Consider an advertiser that sees a desktop conversion rate of 10% and a mobile conversion rate of 2%.
So, mobile is converting 5 times worse than desktop, okay? That's what they're seeing. Your natural response would be to set a bid modifier rule at minus 80%. Does everyone agree, the math on that? You think it's a fifth of shit, so you reduce it by 80%. Okay, that means that at that point, the client is not measuring the untracked conversions. It means that consumers are losing out and getting worse deals. Let's say it's a travel client. Instead of going to Hawaii, you might have ended up in a health spa in Lancashire and your wife didn't agree to marry you. That's the kind of stuff that could happen because they saw Booking.com at position 1 instead of Hawaii Spa at booking number 1 instead. That's the reality of this situation. However, now let's add in the value, a full value of mobile from other conversion types. Let's think that actually there are values coming through calls, there are values coming from mobile to online, in-store and in apps. And if we took the same example and say that a lot of those calls to Hawaii Spa happened when someone wanted to call because they were just on the bus, or actually that they were checking in another environment and they wanted to go home and actually complete the £3,000 purchase online, this might be a lot higher. Let's imagine actually that the conversion rate is now 8%. That's quite aggressive. We've gone from 2% to 8%. That now says that mobile's 4/5 as good as desktop. The effect on the bid multiplier would mean that you would only set the bid multiplier now at minus 20%. What does that mean for the consumer? More consumers would have actually seen the trip on hawaiispars.com and the guy might have had his girlfriend agree to marry him. That's the main thing there. What does it mean for us as a business? Instead of failing to grow at the 20% a year that we need to grow at, it means that actually we can maintain that growth rate. It doesn't mean here at 20% that actually what happens is that we only grow at below 10% a year, several people have to be laid off and we're not in a great position anymore. That is the big difference. So, I want to leave the full value mobile piece there. What I'm now going to do is move on to testing. We get a lot of questions from clients who say, thank you Google, thank you very much for your wonderful and erudite explanation of what we need to do to understand this approach. However, a lot of them want us to put our money where our mouth is and to run a decent test on a mobile phone. So, I'm going to show you, there are 2 different types of tests you can do. There's testing around in-store and there's testing around online. We've got several materials on this in the toolkit. The store test, you can run some coupon tests. They're fraught with difficulties, but there are upsides to those if you can get the scale. Geo-A/B tests are generally in a very effective way. They take about 6 to 9 months to actually get up and running. Carphone Warehouse is just about to have one completed, and that will mean that we can eventually measure that effect. And then in the online space, we've got pre and post testing. So this is trying to test the effect of mobile on online. And actually, this is just standard econometric methods that a lot of clients are used to using regression analysis. It's not 100% accurate, it's fraught with some difficulties in the model, but actually it's been known to work. So the takeout for you as industry managers is to understand what the different types of tests are and to then be able to, after you've had the full value of mobile conversation, encourage the client to do some kind of test. It's not going to be of AdWords accuracy, but it will be credible and statistically significant, and don't be afraid to do that. And it ended at that point. Voila.